Welcome back guys to another video. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Let's get started. Chapter 3, Neji was right. Naruto, Prince of the Underworld. Chapter 3. If anyone got confused about Naruto weapon in travel form, well, they were originally key chains, not key blades. These key chains are attached to wristbands that were created for travel. Polls for the chakra teaching idea. Yes, 2. No, 2 only. Big 3 kids. 3. It is really up to you guys because I can do either one. I only suggested it because it would make everyone a lot more powerful. Thalia would get lightning jutsu, Chidori. Percy would get water jutsu. Aphrodite, sexy jutsu, and love jutsu. This is a laugh though. Anyway, up to you, vote at the end please. On with the show. Life after the freak show went on. Like normal, well, as normal as it could get in this school. For the rest of the year both the boys were a bit put off by the revelation that Miss Dodds never existed. In her place was a perky blonde woman named Mrs. Kerr. When either of the boys would ask something about the old hag, people just looked at them like they were nuts. Naruto, however, did like the new teacher thought. She was a refreshing change from the old crone. Though everyone else seemed to not even know what the hell they were talking about, Grover seemed like he did. He would always hesitate before denying it though. He was such a bad liar. Something was going on. They knew that something had happened at the museum. Anyway, that freak storm continued and one time it blew out the windows in Percy's apartment. Luckily, Naruto offered him a place to stay until things were fixed and ready to go at his place. A few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down only 50 from Yancey Academy, which was scary in itself. Luckily they didn't get hurt. Percy started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. His grades slipped from DS to FS. He got into more fights with Nancy, Bobafett and her friends. He was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Naruto was in some of his class. He was feeling the same way. He stayed under control most of the time. Something odd was going on and they were somehow affected, and it was getting really annoying. Though when Percy got in trouble for calling their English teacher an old sot, whatever that meant, the school sent a letter his mom telling her that Percy would not be allowed back next year. The boy's mood lifted, but just a little bit. Naruto could tell Percy missed his mom because he hated that fact that she was with Gabe of all people. The kid was homesick, no surprise there. Naruto sighed. He came to reality. Exam week was come up soon and he, like Percy and Grover, had to study. Like Shikamaru says, it is going to be troublesome. XXXX. The night before the exams started, Naruto and Percy decided to have a study session at Percy's dorm. Throughout the night, Naruto could see that Percy was getting more and more agitated. Finally he threw his book across the room. Temper, Naruto commented, trying liven up the atmosphere. Sorry, but how the hell am I supposed to know the difference? Chiron and Karen. Simple, one has an I and the other has an A in their name. Naruto smartly said with smirk. Percy slapped his face and gave Naruto a glare. Okay, let me help you then. Chiron, the one with the I, is half horse and trains heroes. Then we have Karen, the one with the A, he is the ferryman of the dead who is a greed ass. The dude loves Olympian money. Is that how you remember everything? Give it a short description and slash or insult them. Percy asked while trying to hide a smirk. Hey, easier for me to remember stuff like that. Naruto smiled. But my way might be best for you. Everyone has a different way of remembering stuff. Yeah. Percy said. I can't believe I am saying this, but I think I should go see Mr. Brunner. He might have a way that is good for me. Want me to come? Naruto asked. Yeah, so I don't feel like a total idiot going down there. Percy replied and got up to get his book. Naruto just laughed. They walked downstairs to the faculty offices. Most of them were dark and empty, but Mr. Brunner's door was ajar, light from his window stretching across the hallway floor. They were 3 steps from the door handle when the duo heard voices inside the office. Mr. Brunner asked a question. A voice that was definitely Grover's said, "Worried about Percy and Naruto, sir." The boys froze at that. They nodded and leaned in to eavesdrop. Not that they did it a lot, but when a friend is talking about you to a teacher, you'd want to what was going on. Alone this summer, Grover was saying. I mean, a kindly one in the school? Now that we know for sure. And they know too, we would only make matters worse by rushing them, Mr. Brunner said. We need the boys to mature more. But he may not have time. The summer solstice deadline will have to be resolved without them, Grover. Let him enjoy his ignorance while he still can. Sir, they saw her. Their imagination, Mr. Brunner insisted. The mist over the students and staff will be enough to convince them of that? Sir, I can't fail in my duties again. Grover's voice was choked with emotion. You know what that would mean. You haven't failed, Grover, Mr. Brunner said kindly. I should have seen her for what she was. Now let's just worry about keeping Percy and Naruto alive until next fall. The mythology book that Percy had brought with him fell to the floor and Naruto's eyes widened in panic as all went silent. As soon as Percy grabbed the book, Naruto grabbed Percy and they ran for it. Percy saw something larger than Mr. Brunner come out of the room. He steered them to a nearby room to hide for a bit. A few seconds later they heard a slow clop clop clop, like muffled wood blocks, then a sound like an animal snuffling right outside the door. A large, dark shape paused in front of the glass, and then moved on. Both the boys were sweating. That was too close. Somewhere in the hallway, Mr. Brunner spoke. Nothing, he murmured. My nerves haven't been right since the winter solstice. Mine neither, Grover said. But I could have sworn. Go back to the dorm, Mr. Brunner told him. You've got a long day of exams tomorrow. Don't remind me. They heard Grover whine. When the lights went off in Mr. Brunner's office went off, they bolted out of the room. They were hiding like a bat out hell. When they made it back to Percy's dorm, he locked the door. Okay, now we know for sure something is going on. Yeah, but what and who would want us dead? I mean, they talked as if someone was after us. Naruto pondered. Hey, you can stay the night, Percy said. I mean, you're the ninja here and if anything happens we would have a better chance at surviving. Fine with me, Naruto said. He then sighed, I just hope we survive the exams. Percy paled and then hung his head, once again reminded of the exams and why they went down there in the first place. I am so screwed. Just then Grover walked in like nothing had happened. Hey, how are you guys doing on the studying? When they both hung their heads and didn't say anything, he got worried. You guys okay? Naruto answered, yep, we are so screwed. XXXX. The next afternoon, they finally got out of their 3-hour Latin exam. 3 hours of that madness. Naruto complained, test back home were never like this? Ugh, my eyes are swimming with all the Greek and Roman names that I misspelled. Percy complained as he held his head. Unfortunately, Mr. Brunner called them back in. Percy, he said, don't be discouraged about leaving Yancey. It's for the best. He then turned to Naruto and asked, what about you? Well, I am split between staying here for Grover's sake or going wherever Percy goes so he won't be the only new kid. Oh, and don't worry, I am used to hopping around. Mostly hopping dimensions, but you don't need to know that. When they were talking, Percy was getting annoyed by the Nancy Bobofit who, like some others, was still taking the test. I see, Mr. Brunner commented. I guess this place is not the right place for you boys then. It'd only a matter of time. Naruto glanced at Percy sadly to see that Percy was upset. I mean, his favorite teacher at this dump of a school and in front of a whole freaking class, was telling him that he couldn't handle it here. This made Naruto pissed off. Percy was his best friend in this land after all. No, Mr. Brunner said. Oh, confound it all. What I'm trying to say, you're not normal, Percy, and neither are you, Naruto. That's nothing to be thanks, I blurted. Thanks a lot, sir, for reminding me. Percy, he called out, but Percy was already out the door. Naruto looked from the door to Mr. Brunner and scowled. Way to choose your words, Mr. Brunner, Naruto said as he left to chase after his friend. XXXX. On the last day of the term, Naruto watched as Percy shoved his clothes into his suitcase. They listened to the other guys brag about where they were going this summer. Those idiots may be juvenile delinquents, but they were also rich juvenile delinquents. One of them asked Percy and Naruto where they were going. My home in the city for the summer, Percy replied. Same here, Naruto said, scaring Percy since he did know he had arrived yet. When did you get here? Percy asked while the others went back to what they were doing, as if the two didn't exist since they were nobodies to them. Hey, a few minutes ago, man, chuckled Naruto. Oh, Percy replied. So remind me again why I am going with you to your place for the day, Naruto said. Well, you can tell I have been a bit peeved lately and you usually help out when I am in a bad mood. So, I guess I need you to keep me in check because Gabe is going to really piss me off. Noted, Naruto commented, and Then his eyes lit up. You know, I live right in the middle. You know, from your apartment to the school. I just noticed that. Good. Then you can come over more often. Percy mumbled as they left the school dorms to get on a bus, though he was wondering how Naruto got from his home to school in time for class. Must be a ninja thing. XXXX. Both boys were dreading how they were going to say goodbye to Grover, but luckily for them, he was on the bus they were on. The whole bus ride, they saw that Grover was very fidgety, like he was expecting something to come out the works to come after him or us. He was like this every time they left the school campus. Odd. Though Percy was getting annoyed by it and he blurted out, looking for kindly ones. Naruto smacked his head while Grover nearly jumped out of his seat. What do you mean? They boy confessed about eavesdropping on his and Mr. Bruner's conversation the night before the exams. Grover's eye twitched. How much did you hear? Oh, not much. What's the summer solstice deadline? Percy asked, and is that too much for you? Naruto smirked. He winced. Look, guys. I was just worried for you, see? I mean, hallucinating about demon math teachers. Grover/dude and I was telling Mr. Brunner that maybe you guys were overstressed or something, because there was no such person as Mrs. Dodds, and dude, you suck at lying. Naruto blurted out, making Grover sputter and his ear turn pink. From his shirt pocket, he fished out a couple of grubby business cards. Just take this, okay? In case you need me this summer. The card was in fancy script, which was murder on their dyslexic eyes, but they finally made out something like, Grover Underwood, Keeper, Half-Blood Hill, Long Island, New York, 800-009-0009. What's half? Percy started. Don't say it aloud, he yelped. That's my, summer address. That made Naruto's eyes roll. There was something really odd going on, that was for sure. Percy looked at little sad that even Grover had a summer home like the other people at school. At least Naruto is like me and lives close. Okay, he said glumly. So, like, if I want to come visit your mansion. He nodded. Or if you need me. Why would I need you? Percy growled out harshly, surprising even Naruto. Grover blushed right down to his Adam's apple. Look, Percy, the truth is, I kind of have to protect you, both of you, he said, making the boys look at him oddly. I mean, they were the one who had to protect him in the school. Grover, Percy said, what exactly are you protecting us from? Before he could answer, there was a huge grinding noise under our feet. Black smoke poured from the dashboard and the whole bus filled with a smell like rotten eggs. The driver cursed and limped the Greyhound bus over to the side of the highway. After a few minutes clanking around in the engine compartment, the driver announced that they'd all have to get off. Percy, Naruto, and Grover filed outside with everybody else. They were on a stretch of country road, no place you'd notice if you didn't break down there. On our side of the highway was nothing but maple trees and litter from passing cars. On the other side, across 4 lanes of asphalt shimmering with afternoon heat, was an old-fashioned fruit stand. Talk about being in the middle of nowhere, Naruto commented while hitting the back of his head on the bus. Raising an eyebrow, he took a look at the fruit stand on the other side of the street. The stuff on sale looked really good. Heaping boxes of blue-red cherries and apples, walnuts and apricots, jugs of cider in a clawfoot tub full of ice. There were no customers, just 3 old ladies sitting in rocking chairs in the shade of a maple tree, knitting the biggest pair of socks they'd ever seen. These were no ordinary socks, they were as big as sweaters. Who wears socks that big? The lady on the right knitted one of them. The lady on the left knitted the other. The lady in the middle held an enormous basket of electric blue yarn. All 3 women looked ancient, with pale faces wrinkled like fruit leather, silver hair tied back in white bandanas, bony arms sticking out of bleached cotton dresses. The creepy thing is that they were staring right at Percy and Naruto. Talk about creepy, Naruto commented. Hey Grover. Whatever Naruto was going to ask died in his throat. You okay, man? Percy asked when he saw Grover's face. They looked at Grover to see that all the color had drained out of him, and his nose was twitching. Tell em, are they looking at you too? They are, aren't they? Yeah. Weird, huh? You think those socks would fit me? Asked Percy in a joking manner. Not likely, Naruto replied, getting really freaked out. I don't think they would even fit the fattest priest. Not funny, you two. Not funny at all. Grover whined. What is eating you? Naruto asked. Grover only pointed to the old ladies. The old lady in the middle took out a huge pair of scissors, gold and silver, long blade, like shears. They heard Grover catch his breath. "We're getting on the bus," he told them. "Come on." "What?" Percy said. "It's 1,000 degrees in there." "You actually like the heat, Grover?" Naruto asked/complained. "Come on." He pried open the door and climbed inside while the duo stayed back for a bit. Across the road, the old ladies were still watching them. The middle one cut the yarn, which they could hear that snip across 4 lanes of traffic. Her 2 friends balled up the electric blue socks, leaving me wondering who they could possibly be for. Probably for Bigfoot or the man in the moon. Naruto rolled his eyes and climbed into the bus. "Come on, let go see Grover before he pisses himself." At the rear of the bus, the driver wrenched a big chunk of smoking metal out of the engine compartment. The bus shuddered, and the engine roared back to life and everyone cheered. "Darn right," yelled the driver. He slapped the bus with his hat. "Everybody back on board." "Oh, just in time," Naruto drawled as he walked to the back with Percy. Once the bus got going, Percy got all feverish like he got the flu while Naruto started sweating and complaining about the heat. Grover was not any better, but he was chatting his teeth like he was cold. "Grover?" asked Percy. "Yeah, what are you not telling us?" Grover dabbed his forehead with his shirt sleeve. "Percy, what did you two see back at the fruit stand?" "A few old ladies with way too much time on their hand," Naruto replied while putting a hand on his forehead and wiping off the sweat. "Yeah." Percy smirked but lost it at Grover's serious face. "Wait, they're not like Demigods, are they?" The look he gave them made it seem worse. "What could be worse?" "Just tell me what you saw." The middle one took out her scissors, and she cut the yarn. Percy shrugged, like it was nothing. Grover closed his eyes and made a gesture with his fingers that might have been crossing himself, but it wasn't. It was something else, something almost older. "Now that is odd," he said. "You saw her snip the cord?" "Yeah, so," Percy replied, getting the feeling like it was something big. "This is not happening," Grover mumbled. He started chewing at his thumb. "I don't want this to be like the last time." "What last time?" the boys asked, getting freaked out as much as Grover was now. "Always 6th grade. They never get past 6th. Grover mumbled to himself again. "Grover," Percy said, because he was really starting to get scared. "What are you talking about?" "Let me walk you two home from the bus station. Promise me?" This seemed like a strange request, but they promised he could. "It is no problem, I am going over to his place anyway," Naruto replied. Is this like a superstition or something?" Percy asked, but got no answer. "Grover, that snipping of the yarn. Does that mean somebody is going to die?" He looked at the two mournfully, like he was already picking the kind of flowers that would be best on their coffins. That is when the cogs of Naruto's mind started churning, and rapidly. The things that have been happening lately and all the Greek mythology they had been learning finally caught up to him. Those 3 old crones were something that he paled at. "Oh crap. What?" Percy said, freaked out that Naruto was scared now. Neji was right, fate or in this case fates do exist, Naruto replied, while Percy and Grover gawked at him. 3rd chapter is done. Hope you all like it. Please review and vote in the reviews. Chapter 4, Gabe is pawned? Grover has what? Naruto, Prince of Underworld Chapter 4. Hey everyone. I did find the torrents for the Percy Jackson series. I used a program called Views to find it for me. So, I guess you could say I have all the books online and in real life. I will post as much as I can, but since I am starting up college again and working, I will do my best. Now, a lot people didn't want Naruto to teach the camp jutsu, but you guys also just wanted him to teach Thalia and Percy. So here is what I am going to do. Since they sort of already have their versions of jutsu, I will just have Naruto help the two of them recreate jutsu like Chidori. So they will not actually be chakra jutsu. I hope that is okay. Oh, and when Naruto gets to camp, I am going to have a few girls have a crush on him, but don't worry. It will end of Naruto/Thalia. The rest of bus ride they listened to Grover freak out to himself the whole way. So it was not a surprise that when it was over that Grover had to go to the can. You see, when Grover get upset, his bladder act up. So when Grover went to the bathroom at the bus station, the boys quickly got away. Percy hailed a cab and they jumped in. East 104th and 1st, Percy told the driver, while Naruto made the shadow clone hand sign. Percy looked at him oddly when nothing happened. What was that about? As the yellow cab drove them away from the bus station, Naruto replied, I made one outside. You know Grover will freak out as he had been about not being able to protect you. Besides, I think it is time he knows what I can do. Percy gave Naruto a small smile and said, you know you are going to give him a heart attack. Naruto gave Percy a smirk as they traveled to his mom's apartment. Along the way, Percy told Naruto all about his mom. My mom's name is Sally Jackson and she is the best person in the world. That also proves my theory that the best people have the rottenest luck. Percy said as Naruto nodded, having heard that from him a few weeks ago. XXXX Grover got out of the bathroom and looked around for Percy and Naruto. He only saw Naruto with his arms crossed. Hey Naruto, where is Percy? He went home. Naruto replied, making Grover's eyes widen. Don't worry. Though, I am with him. What? How can that be possible? You are right here. Grover freaked. Grover, Mr. Brunner was right. Percy is not normal and in a sense, neither am I. Naruto explained, making Grover sweat under the blonde's gaze. Weird shit has been going on lately and it has been going on most of Percy's life. Me on the other hand, I think that stuff is a bit normal, the thing with people trying to kill you. Naruto then looked around them to see that the bus station was completely empty. Everyone had left a while ago. I know I am not normal because I have powers that normal humans don't have. Remember that Grover, because that helped me protect Percy like you want. Naruto's form then faltered a bit before it went up in a hail of shadows flying into the nearby shadows. Grover had a look of pure shock on his face. No way. XXXX the demigod duo made it to Percy's apartment and paid. Percy looked up at the apartment nervously and said, Naruto, are you sure want to come in? Smelly Gabe is a real jerk and he will not be any different to you. Naruto smiled with a bit of annoyance. Yeah Percy. You told me about your mom and all her history and I still can't figure why she is with this Gabe. Don't worry, I won't anger him much. I am getting a bad feeling about this. Percy said as they entered the building, hoping his mom would be home from work. Instead, Smelly Gabe was in the living room, playing poker with his buddies. The television blared ESPN. Chips and beer cans were strewn all over the carpet. Wow, it is worse than I expected. Naruto thought with a deadpanned expression. Hardly looking up, Gabe said around his cigar, so, you're home. Who is your loser friend? Naruto. Where's my mom? Percy replied shortly. Working, he said. You got any cash? That made Percy rolled his eyes. What, no, welcome back. Good to see you. How has your life been the last 6 months? Figures. Percy noticed that Gabe had put on weight. He looked like a tuskless walrus in thrift store clothes. He had about 3 hairs on his head, all combed over his bald scalp, as if that made him handsome or something. This guy managed the electronics megamart in Queens, but he stayed home most of the time. It was a wonder why he hadn't been fired long before. He just kept on collecting paychecks, spending the money on cigars that made Percy nauseous, and on beer, of course. Always beer. Whenever Percy was home, he expected him to provide his gambling funds. He called that their guy's secret. Meaning, if he told his mom, he would punch his lights out. Of course Naruto knew, as he had told him along the way. Naruto was not happy about that. I don't have any cash, Naruto heard Percy tell him, which made the man raise a greasy eyebrow. Percy had told Naruto that the man could smell money but not much else, which was very odd. You took a taxi from the bus station, he said. Probably paid with a 20. Got 6-7 bucks in change. Somebody expects to live under this roof. He ought to carry his own weight. Am I right, Eddie? Eddie, the super of the apartment building, looked at Percy with a twinge of sympathy. Come on, Gabe, he said. The kid just got here. Am I right? Gabe repeated. Eddie scowled into his bowl of pretzels. The other 2 guys, Naruto noticed, passed gas in harmony. Fine, Percy said. He dug a wad of dollars out of his pocket and threw the money on the table. I hope you lose. Before anything could be said or done, Naruto put a hand on Percy's shoulder and the money. Percy looked at Naruto oddly before he noticed the gleam in Naruto's eye. Oh, Gabe was so screwed. How about I play? You can take my money if I lose, Naruto said. Percy smirked. He knew from experience, and a lot of others at school too, that Naruto never lost at card games, and he didn't even know how to play some of them. What? A brat like you, Gabe said, eyeing Naruto. Afraid of being beat by a kid. Naruto smirked. Besides, I got $100. Are you going to pass up on that? That got Gabe's attention. Even though he was mad, Naruto did have money. He would win it from this brat and rub it in his face. Fine, sit down and play. Good. Naruto sat down and leaned over to Percy. This will be over soon. You should get settled in, it is your place after all. As the game began, Percy nodded and left. He hoped Gabe would so lose. To Naruto. He slammed the door to his room, which really wasn't his room. During school months, it was Gabe's study. The man didn't study anything in there except old car magazines, but Gabe loved shoving Percy's stuff in the closet, leaving his muddy boots on my windowsill, and doing his best to make the place smell like his nasty cologne and cigars and stale beer. Percy dropped his suitcase on the bed. Home sweet home. Oh joy. As he thought about other stuff, he didn't know how much time had passed. He walked to his door in time to hear two things. Gabe's crying out, which he knew from experience that it was the cry of a loser, and his mom calling him. It seemed that she was home now. I think this day just got better. She opened the door and looked at Percy with a smile on her face. Oh, Percy. She hugged him tightly. I can't believe it. You've grown since Christmas. Thanks, Mom. Percy said. Her red, white and blue Sweet on America uniform smelled like the best things in the world, chocolate, licorice, and all the other stuff she sold at the candy shop in Grand Central. She'd brought him a huge bag of free samples, the way she always did when he came home. So who is your friend out there beating everyone at poker? Oh, that is Naruto Uzumaki. He is a good friend from school. Percy replied. Good to know you have a friend. Sassly Jackson said softly as she hugged him again. Percy then began to tell her all about his school year at Yancey Academy. It seriously was not as bad as the headmaster said it was. He didn't really tell her much about the museum because it still freaked him out. Did something scare you? No, Mom. Percy lied. But whatever happened seemed to revolve around both me and Naruto, he said, making her eyes widen. So, Percy found a friend like himself. That is good, because if he ever got to that world, he would really need a friend. Mrs. Jackson thought to herself. From the other room, Gabe yelled, Hey, Sally, how about some bean dip? Huh. Figures, even if he is beaten, he is still a jerk? Percy thought while grinding his teeth. Oh, never mind. Your brat of a friend got it for us, came Gabe's voice again. Percy gave a weak smile when he heard that. I so owe you for this, Naruto. I have a surprise for you, Sally said. We're going to the beach. Percy's eyes widened. Montauk. 3 nights, same cabin. When? She smiled. As soon as I get changed. He couldn't believe it. They hadn't been to Montauk the last 2 summers, because Gabe said there wasn't enough money. He then looked at her hopeful and said, Can Naruto come too? He can pay, I am sure, after the beating he gave Gabe. She laughed and nodded her head. I don't see the problem with that. With that they left his room and walked out to see a steaming Gabe and a smirking Naruto. Gabe's friends were looking at Naruto like he was the poker god. Gabe looked at them and regained his composure and said, You were in there a long time. Oh, we were just talking about the trip. Sally said happily. Gabe's eyes got small. The trip? You mean you were serious about that? I knew it, Percy muttered. He won't let us go. Of course he will, his mom said. Evenly. Your stepfather is just worried about money. That's all. Besides, she added, Gabriel won't have to settle for bean dip. I'll make him enough 7-layer dip for the whole weekend. Guacamole. Sour cream. The works. Gabe softened a bit. So this money for your trip, it comes out of your clothes budget, right? Because I lost most of mine to this brat. The fat man said while jutting his pudgy finger at Naruto, who had an innocent look on his face. Yes, honey, Sally said. And you won't take my car anywhere but there and back. We'll be very careful. Gabe scratched his double chin. Maybe if you hurry with that 7-layer dip. And maybe if the kid apologizes for interrupting my poker game. Maybe if I kick you in your soft spot, Percy thought. And make you sing soprano. For a week. He looked to his mom and it was a silent agreement that he had to be nice to Gabe if this was going to work. I'm sorry, Percy muttered. I'm really sorry I interrupted your incredibly important poker game. Please go back to it right now. Gabe narrowed his eyes, trying to detect sarcasm in what Percy said. Yeah, whatever. He then turned to Naruto. No more for you. Go away. Naruto just shrugged and walked over to Percy and his mom. Oh, Naruto, would you like to come with us? She asked. Sure. Are you sure you want someone like me on board? Yes, you are Percy's friend after all, so you must be a good kid. Sally replied, making Gabe rolled his eyes. Okay then. I hope you don't mind me paying for my stuff since I now have quite a bit of money. Naruto said, pocketing his money, which was about $500. He smirked when he heard Gabe complain about having to pay for Naruto's trip. Thank you, Sally said with a smile because she heard it too. Once we get to Montauk, we'll talk more about whatever you've forgotten to tell me, okay? She said to Percy. Naruto just knew that he told his mom about a little of what happened. Oh Naruto, we need to go to your place for you to pack. Before Gabe could complain, Naruto replied, Nah, I got my stuff with me. Since I hung out at Percy's dorm at lot, I hardly ever went home to my apartment, which is the halfway point from here to school. Oh, okay then, Mrs. Jackson said, thinking that Naruto probably left his stuff somewhere near here. She then gave Percy a smile and went to make the dip for the fat dip. An hour later, they were all ready to go. Naruto had a backpack on now and Sally wondered where it had come from. Percy just smiled, if only you knew Mom. Gabe watched as Naruto and Percy put all the bags in the car. The ugly man groaned about losing his wife's cooking and then his car all weekend, which, unlike him, was cool. It was a 78 Camaro. Not a scratch on this car. Brain boy, poker brat, he warned them as they loaded the last bag. Not one little scratch. Naruto just gave him a saluted as the fat man lumbered back in the apartment. He knew that Gabe really pissed Percy off and he now understood why. He was getting pissed at this guy as well. He then saw Percy make that odd gesture that Grover did on the bus and whatever he did worked because as soon smelly. Gabe was in the doorway, the screen door slammed shut and probably sent the man flying. The two boys quickly got in the car and Percy told his mom to step on it as they didn't want to feel Gabe's wrath. After a bit, Naruto could not help but laugh at what he was happened. Though, that weird gesture Percy used had energy similar to chakra. Odd. XXXX. Once they got there, Naruto smiled as he loved places like this. They set their stuff in the cabin that they got and messed around till it was dark out. They were currently sitting around a small fire, roasting hot dogs and marshmallows. Mom, what was my father like? Percy asked with some courage. He was kind, Percy, she said. Tall, handsome, and powerful. But gentle, too. You have his black hair, you know, and his green eyes. She fished a blue jelly bean out of her candy bag. I wish he could see you, Percy. He would be so proud. Percy looked a little sad at that. Naruto thought that the kid was thinking about how his father would be proud of him with all that happened. How old was I? Percy asked. I mean, when he left. She watched the flames. He was only with me for one summer, Percy. Right here at this beach. This cabin. But, he knew me as a baby. No, honey. He knew I was expecting a baby, but he never saw you. He had to leave before you were born. She said and then looked to Naruto, who had been silent for the conversation. Naruto, what are your parents like? Naruto chuckled a bit, but it was hollow. I am an orphan. I never really knew my parents. But I was given some stuff of my father's. He had a journal that described my mom to be a fiery and tomboyish redhead. She loved pranks as much as I do and she was also a very caring person. I was told she died in childbirth. Now I heard that my dad was the best fighter around and an all-around nice guy, though if what I read is right, my mom wore the pants in that relationship. That made Percy chuckle a bit and his mom had a big smile on her face. I am sorry about that. Sally said. Who is taking care of you? Don't be. My grandfather was taking care of me before he died. Naruto said, not wanting to tell them that he was killed. But I have been doing pretty well on my own anyway. Then Percy had a sad look. He didn't know if his mom even wanted him around. He didn't think he could handle being alone like Naruto. Are you going to send me away again? Percy asked her. To another boarding school. She pulled a marshmallow from the fire. I don't know, honey. Her voice was heavy. I think we'll have to do something. Because you don't want me around, but he regretted the words as soon as they were out. Her eyes welled with tears. She took his hand, squeezed it tight. Oh, Percy, no. I have to, honey. For your own good. I have to send you away. This made Naruto quirk an eyebrow. Okay, the way she is saying this means she knows something like Gover and Mr. Brunner. Because I'm not normal, Percy suddenly said. You say that as if it's a bad thing, Percy. But you don't realize how important you are. I thought Yancy Academy would be far enough away. I thought you'd finally be safe. Safe from what? Percy asked, though when he locked eyes with her, all the memories of weird shit happening to him had surfaced. Before anything else was said, Naruto cut in. Percy, not being normal is not that bad. I mean, look at me. I have this powers and I am fine. Mrs. Jackson looked at him oddly and he sighed, knowing that he would have to show her. He held out his hand and swirling ball of energy formed in his hand. Percy's eyes widened and said, you never showed that one to me, only those shadow clones. Shadow? Could he be just like Percy, a son of the big three? Sally thought as she eyed the ball before it dissipated. She gave Naruto a grateful look and continued on. I've tried to keep you as close to me as I could, she said to Percy. They told me that was a mistake. But there's only one other option, Percy, the place your father wanted to send you. And I just can't stand to do it. My father wanted me to go to a special school. Not a school, she said softly. A summer camp, and apparently it is a place you both need to go to. Both boys just looked at her oddly. Naruto never heard anything about a camp in the letter he got from his dad. I'm sorry, Percy, she said, seeing the look in his eyes. But I can't talk about it. I couldn't send you to that place. It might mean saying goodbye to you for good. For good? But if it's only a summer camp. Percy trailed off as he saw the tears in his mom's eyes. XXXX, it was storming out, but both boys were sound asleep and they were having the same exact dream. It was storming on the beach, and three beautiful animals, a white horse, a golden eagle, and pitch black raven were trying to kill each other at the edge of the surf. Well, the raven was not doing much. It just hovered in midair, watching the two fight, and only with a mild look of interest. Of course it would attack at certain times. The eagle swooped down and slashed the horse's muzzle with its huge talons. The horse reared up and kicked at the eagle's wings. The raven then decided to claw at the eagle a bit before doing the same to the horse. As they fought, the ground rumbled, and a monstrous voice chuckled somewhere beneath the earth, goading the animals to fight harder. Percy and Naruto ran toward them, knowing they had to stop them from killing each other, but the problem was that they were running in slow motion. They knew they would be too late. They saw the eagle dive down, its beak aimed at the horse's wide eyes, while the raven decided to help out its flying companion. The two boys had enough and screamed, no. Thankfully it was just a dream, and they woke up with a start like it was a nightmare. Outside, it really was storming, the kind of storm that cracks trees and blows down houses. There was no horse, eagle, or raven on the beach, just lightning making false daylight, and 20-foot waves pounding the dunes like artillery. Though everyone once in a while they saw that the lightning was covered in black fire, or sometimes they also saw steaming hot water fly up into the sky, but it was a sickly black color. This shit never happens. With the next thunderclap, Percy's mom awoke. She sat up, eyes wide, and said, "Hurricane." Percy knew that was crazy. Long Island never sees hurricanes this early in the summer. But the ocean seemed to have forgotten. Over the roar of the wind, he heard a distant bellow, an angry, tortured sound that made his hair stand on end. Then a much closer noise, like mallets in the sand. A desperate voice, someone yelling, pounding on our cabin door. Mrs. Jackson sprang out of bed in her nightgown and threw open the lock. Grover stood framed in the doorway against a backdrop of pouring rain. But he wasn't exactly Grover. Searching all night, he gasped. What were you two thinking? Mrs. Jackson looked at them in terror, not scared of Grover, but of why he'd come. They boy were too shocked at the moment to register that, however. Because, instead of normal legs, Grover had legs that were like an animal's, sort of like a donkey or maybe a goat. Percy, she said, shouting to be heard over the rain. What happened at school? What didn't you tell me? Ozukai aloithioi, Grover yelled. It's right behind me. Didn't you tell her? You mean the kindly one you blabbed about, or the old crones who are the fates? Naruto shouted above the noise, making Percy's mom widen her eyes in horror. She grabbed her purse, tossed Percy and Naruto a rain jacket, and said, "Get to the car. All of you. Go." Grover ran for the Camaro, but he wasn't running, exactly. He was trotting, shaking his shaggy hindquarters, and suddenly his story about a muscular disorder in his legs made sense to me. That would explain how he could run so fast and still limp when he walked. Yep, We have entered the Twilight Zone, Naruto mumbled. But what is coming after us? He never got an answer because Grover quickly got in the car, not hearing him. He sighed and got in. Welcome back guys to another video. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Let's get started. Chapter 3, Neji was right. Naruto, Prince of the Underworld. Chapter 3. If anyone got confused about Naruto weapon in travel form, well, they were originally key chains, not key blades. These key chains are attached to wristbands that were created for travel. Polls for the chakra teaching idea. Yes, 2. No, 2 only. Big 3 kids. 3 It is really up to you guys because I can do either one. I only suggested it because it would make everyone a lot more powerful. Thalia would get lightning jutsu, Chidori. Percy would get water jutsu. Aphrodite, sexy jutsu, and love jutsu. This is a laugh though. Anyway, up to you, vote at the end please. On with the show. Life after the freak show went on. Like normal, well, as normal as it could get in this school. For the rest of the year both the boys were a bit put off by the revelation that Miss Dodds never existed. In her place was a perky blonde woman named Mrs. Kerr. When either of the boys would ask something about the old hag, people just looked at them like they were nuts. Naruto, however, did like the new teacher thought. She was a refreshing change from the old crone. Though everyone else seemed to not even know what the hell they were talking about, Grover seemed like he did. He would always hesitate before denying it though. He was such a bad liar. Something was going on. They knew that something had happened at the museum. Anyway, that freak storm continued and one time it blew out the windows in Percy's apartment. Luckily, Naruto offered him a place to stay until things were fixed and ready to go at his place. A few days later, the biggest tornado ever spotted in the Hudson Valley touched down only 50 from Yancey Academy, which was scary in itself. Luckily they didn't get hurt. Percy started feeling cranky and irritable most of the time. His grades slipped from DS to FS. He got into more fights with Nancy, Bobafett and her friends. He was sent out into the hallway in almost every class. Naruto was in some of his class. He was feeling the same way. He stayed under control most of the time. Something odd was going on and they were somehow affected.